I was watching this thing. I don't know if it was Locked Up Raw or whatever it was, and it was just this program talking about how not to get raped in prison. Because listen, every man, that's one of your fears in life. It's like something you wouldn't want to experience. Even as a dude who's a boxer, even as all the different things I do, you still say, okay, cool. I don't plan to ever be in prison, but just in case, let me have this knowledge. And one thing they talked about was how they groom you. They start off real friendly. These days they don't really rape you as much. They don't, they what they'll do is they'll come to you, they'll offer you things, offer you extra food, act like they're your friend, act like they know you. You know, leave some cigarettes or some soap or some candy on your bed, and if you take that, then they'll feel that you're indebted to them, and then they'll begin to pressure you, and you don't know how much they cost. Somebody said you don't know if a candy bar is going to cost $1,000. So when they do that, they cause you to be indebted to them so that they want something out of you with sexual favors. That's the same way that a lot of women feel when they're not sexually attracted to you, and then you try to run the nice guy game on them. You got to understand that. You got to understand that. Even if you really are a nice person, and even if you don't think that sex is everything, sexual chemistry is still a thing. Making sure she's sexually attracted to you is still a thing. And you have to make sure it's usually how this situation goes is either she sees it as you're doing that because you want something. She is truly naive, which I wouldn't bet on. And she really thinks you're just doing all those things because you're just nice, and she doesn't even take any romantic interest out of it, which will put you in the friend zone. Or it's a situation where she sees it as you're doing those things because you want sex, and she has no intention of giving you sex, so she's just going to take everything that you have to give, right? And that could just be your time, your attention, your energy. Could be your resources, your friendly favors, all of these different things you do. Just non-sexual access to you emotionally to vent about all her problems and to tell you all the things going on in her life. And you just have to understand that trying to offer non-sexual things because you want sexual access to a person is not the way to go. Just even on a basis of morality. Like some people see my view as more so hedonism, but I would say that I think it's more moral to treat a person with like as if they have agency. Treat a person like they have agency and just tell them what you want and just say that in a way that makes that outcome desirable. And when you do that and you have that effect, then whatever is going on is a one-to-one transaction. It's not transactional, it's intrinsic. It's an intrinsic reward. Intrinsic value is being shared, right? And you find out if there's intrinsic motivation behind her sexual desire for you. Chances are, as a man, you usually have intrinsic motivation, and sometimes men have sex for love too, so watch that. But it's one of those things where you make sure she has intrinsic desire for you, you have intrinsic desire for her, and then everything else you do is just going to add on to who you are as a person. It's not going to be things that seem like you're doing that to get sex. If she puts some time in, you get to know her well, you vet her out, then the things that you want to do out of the kindness of your heart come off as the kindness of your heart. But then there are also going to be women that when you begin to do things, they're still going to feel that fear, that indebtedness. You cause them to feel an emotion. I had an experience myself, actually multiple experiences, but not a whole lot. I learned my lesson, but I remember there was a friend with benefits I had. One time I bought her some flowers. No, we had this anonymous thing on Facebook, and I sent her a message. It was pretty funny, right? I just said, if I suck on that pussy, will that get you wet? I put it in quotations and then put Kirk Franklin, because Kirk Franklin looked like plies. And she sent it to me. She screenshotted it, sent it to me. She's like, "Well, this you?" Like, "Yeah, it was." I was like, "All right, cool." I thought it was gonna be a cool little conversation. She's like, "Oh, I didn't get any of the sweet ones. I thought I was gonna get some of the sweet ones or something like that." And I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna do you one better than that. Here's a few dollars. Go get you, some flowers from me, from a friend, right? Some friendly flowers, because we had a conversation a couple years back, or whatever it was, where she said none of her boyfriends ever got her flowers before. And I'm like, well, I'm not her boyfriend, but we cool. We've been friends for a while, so I ain't tripping on that. So I sent her the flowers. She told me she cried because she never got the flowers before. Then the very next weekend, when I tried to sleep with her, her response was, "Oh, we can't have it, or I can't do it anymore," or something like that. I don't know. And I just said, okay, cool. see, one thing I understood was there's this validational thing going on. So when that happened, what I did was I said, okay, cool. And I didn't give it any energy. I didn't ask why or any of that. So because I didn't ask why, tried to bait me with some lightly sexual humor. And she sent that a couple times, and I just looked at it. I didn't really respond. So the next weekend came up. She hit me up because we were in different cities. She hit me up, and when she hit me up, asked me if I was going to be in town. I was like, no, I'm not going to be in town because you have to schedule. You have to schedule your appointment like everybody else. So, I'm, ripping and running, doing my thing. She hit me up the next weekend. You going to be in town? No. Next weekend I am in town. And you know what I did? And it's just like, it's one of those situations where you have to understand that the non-sexual things you do for a woman when you're in a sexual relationship aren't always going to have a positive effect on her. That's where boyfriend energy will get you in trouble. Boyfriend energy has got me in trouble a few times, right? Especially in every situation, it was with a girl who I wasn't actually trying to be her boyfriend. That's the funny thing. It's just sometimes maybe you're conditioned to I think one aspect of it is just sometimes just your natural personality, or you're just really used to being in long-term relationships, so you're not accustomed to knowing how to separate sex from emotions. So sometimes you may be in a situation where, and the situations I found myself in, where you just think that, or just, not understanding that for some women it's difficult to separate, sex and friendship. Sex and emotion is not an issue with separating the two. The issue is with being able to maintain a friendship which is a dynamic that isn't based on your masculine feminine dynamic, while still having this sexual relationship going on that is based on your masculine feminine dynamic. And that's difficult for a lot of women to manage. So, when you just pull back a little bit and give it a rest, then it kind of just sorts things out on its own. You got to give her some time to sort out her own emotions, her own stuff that she deals with. Sometimes you just got to give it a little bit of distance to take that energy away. But when it comes to these situations of being, especially a lot of friends with benefit situations, or when you're just meeting a woman and approaching her, offering things doesn't always mean a good thing. And just because she accepts it doesn't mean that she wants to deal with you. And you have a whole nother can of worms to open up if she wants to deal with you because you're giving her things, if you want something long term. Because you don't want to deal with a woman who sees you as a trick or a lick. I knew this one girl. She said that her boyfriend started off as a trick to her, but then he worked his way up, and she fell for the dude. It became her dude, right? She was crazy about the man. She really was, but she could not help herself from cheating on him. Could not help herself at all. I was one of the dudes she was cheating with, and there were some other dudes too, and it was just or whatever it was, however her situation was, I don't know, that was her business. But it's one of those things where, I don't know, it's either a lack of sexual desire there, or a lack of some other shit going on. Maybe it's just some religious pressure. I don't know. But when I looked at the whole situation, I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. I'm like, yeah, I already kind of knew how it was going to be. I didn't judge her for that. I was like, yeah, that's tough. I think she tried to be honest about the shit. But it's just one of those things where you don't want a woman's first mindset about you to be that you're the beta male provider type of guy. Because sometimes a woman will feel internal pressure, and she'll succumb to that internal pressure, a societal pressure that says she needs to be with a good guy. And what you don't want to do is to deal with one of those women who is forcing themselves to try to be with a good guy because they're being illogical. Be aware of women who are too logical about how they feel about you. I remember that woman, we had a conversation one time, and she said, he wants to love me so bad, I'll be a fool to pass it up. And I was like, yo, that's weird. Because it's like, anytime a woman talks about the way, things that you can offer her as the reason she likes you instead of how you make her feel, that's never a good sign. Always watch your back around those kind of women, always. And that's true. So just watch trying to trade non-sexual things for sexual things. One other point I'm going to hit about that is a man who's trying to trade non-sexual things in order to gain sexual access to a woman, that's a trick, but that's what a woman views as a hoe to her, right? If you're doing it unsuccessfully, right? Or if you're doing it at a rate that isn't beneficial to you, right? So let's say just giving money, that the fact that your sex isn't a one-to-one transaction automatically makes you less valuable, right? To a woman in most instances. And then after you go through that process, if you try to use like things other than money, your time, attention, it doesn't matter what it is, and to no avail, then women will use you as an emotional tampon, somewhere to get their ego stroked, right? The same way a man would use a woman who tries to have sex with dudes with no avail for a relationship. Now, not everyone who has sex with men for no avail is just looking for a relationship or doing it transactionally. Those are women who have, learned to just embody their sexuality. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm talking about a different dynamic. It's when you're trying to do something to no avail to get something that you want that's seen as low value by the opposite sex. So that's a male version of what a woman, because that's a male version of what a man sees when he calls a woman a hoe. That's one of them right there. So be careful about trying to give too much of your non-sexual things in order to get sexual access.